Masters of the Universe opens this weekend and fans are already asking all kinds of questions. How will it compare to the animated show? What classic characters will make an appearance? And is the plot still going to revolve largely around Courtney Cox's parents dying in a plane crash? This video is brought to you by Factor. Head to factormeals.com/Murrell50off and use code Murrell50off for a special offer. And stay tuned after the video for more info. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here on the road, so I'm using my hotel voice a little bit in this review for Masters of the Universe. The review embargo was just lifted. I just actually saw the movie not that long ago. Masters of the Universe has been in some phase of development, bouncing in between studios for almost 2 decades. Development that began when my generation of He-Man fans was much more appealing to executives and to studio marketing teams. This is the 3rd feature film directed by Travis Knight, who is also the head of stop-motion company Laika. He previously directed Kubo and the Two Strings and Bumblebee. It was written by Chris Butler, who is one of Knight's collaborators at Laika, as well as Aaron and Adam Nee, who were at one time attached as directors for the film when it was at Netflix, and David Callahan, who was a co-writer on Across the Spider-Verse, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and 2021's Mortal Kombat. The actor taking up He-Man's Sword of Power is Nicholas Galitzine, who we find on Earth as the exiled Prince Adam, sent away from his home planet of Eternia as a child when it was conquered by the evil Skeletor, who's voiced by Jared Leto in a performance that I can only describe as Christopher Nolan's Bane if he was played by Tim Curry in the 1980s. Once Adam returns to Eternia, he soon learns how to wield the power of Castle Grayskull and become Eternia's champion, a warrior known in the cartoon as He-Man, a name that eventually pops up in the film in a very tongue-in-cheek way. On Adam's side are Idris Elba's Man-at-Arms, the protector of the captured King Randor, his daughter Teela, played by Camila Mendez, who was Adam's only childhood friend, the sorceress of Castle Grayskull, played by Morena Baccarin, and a motley crew of warriors including Ram Man, Mechanic, Adam's green pet tiger Cringer, and yes, Fisto, who has a really big fist. And whatever joke you're thinking of making about Fisto's name right now, the movie makes repeatedly and in every scene that Fisto's in. Skeletor's evil forces include Alison Brie as Evil Lyn, perhaps the character who's most in touch with her cartoon counterpart, as well as Beastman, Triclops, and Trapjaw, who I think is rather impressively realized through practical makeup instead of digital effects. The forces of good and evil then face off with the fate of Eternia hanging in the balance. I was born in 1983, and He-Man was the first thing that I remember loving. I watched the cartoon, I had the toys, I dressed up as He-Man for Halloween. The Dolph Lundgren version of Masters of the Universe was on repeat in my house while I was growing up. But when the time came to see this movie, I didn't attach any sort of outsized expectations to meet childhood nostalgia to it. If anything, I thought that the look of the characters was really impressive, and I was looking forward to seeing what Travis Knight and the writers behind this movie were going to do with some very impressive looking toys that they had laid out in the sandbox. What they ended up producing is a film that I think would have been considered a perfectly mediocre MCU movie in, let's say, Phase 2. When the formula of covering everything in quips and jokes, setting up comedy beats to underpin every scene, and nudging the audience to laugh every 30 seconds or so was still somewhat fresh. It was wearing out its welcome, sure, but still amusing. But a lot of time has passed since 2016, and what was wearing out its welcome back then is now firmly out of style in 2026. It felt like the movie spent so much time trying to convince me to have a good time that it forgot to actually show me a good time. And when your movie is 90% jokes, and for me about 85% of those jokes don't really land, we're going to be on a pretty rough road. It's a shame because the right ingredients for a really great and interesting version of Masters of the Universe are all here in the movie. I think that Travis Knight was the right choice to direct the film, and the movie is not ashamed most of the time to embrace the look and the design of the cartoon characters. I think the casting is mostly on point. It feels like an immaculately staged Shakespearean play where someone forgot to decide what Shakespeare play they were doing, leaving the actors to vamp desperately on stage in order to salvage the production. There were moments where the movie really worked for me, but they were mostly sequences where nobody was talking. As soon as anybody opened their mouths, it was the same kind of warmed over Phase 2 and sitcom level humor that didn't work for me throughout the entire film. Nicholas Galitzine, I think, was a solid choice for He-Man. He does well with what he's given, though the script doesn't really make much distinction between the characters of He-Man and Prince Adam, and that's probably due to the movie's philosophy that real strength isn't about the size of your muscles, but what's inside. I still think that Galitzine could have been given more to do, even with that philosophy, but he fills the hero role well, and I think that he could have excelled with a better script. Skeletor is a more complicated question. Choosing Jared Leto to play this role was an interesting decision, for sure, but this wasn't really the issue for me. The screenplay can't really seem to decide if Skeletor is a truly menacing villain, a wry, dry-witted mustache twirler a la Scar in The Lion King, or a pathetic, grandstanding self-parody worthy of mockery. I think that all of those takes could have worked, and there are moments of each take that do work in the film, but it left the character feeling flat for me. The central hero-villain dynamic, I think, is really important to nail in a movie like this, and in the otherwise admittedly uneven Dolph Lundgren version, I think it's one of the things that they got right, because Frank Langella was a really, really good Skeletor. Here, Skeletor seems to be whatever kind of character he needs to be to get a laugh in every scene, or even moment to moment in the same scene, and he did get a few laughs for me, but at the expense of his characterization throughout. The mixed take on Skeletor also extends to just how much the movie wants to embrace its cartoon roots. It's very faithful in look and feel and occasionally tone, but at other times it seems like it wants to run away from the cartoonishness. Like the explanation that character names like Ram Man and Fisto aren't actually the names of those characters, they were just nicknames that Prince Adam came up with when he was a little boy because he didn't know the characters' actual names, but they also use those names throughout the film, so they sort of run away from the ridiculousness of it when it suits them, but also embrace the ridiculousness of it also when it suits them to make the best joke. The effects in the film, I'd say, are okay. I think that some of them were realized pretty impressively, and others look pretty cheap. Travis Knight's embrace of a cartoonish style for the film, I think, does give the effects more leeway, but there were some moments that just didn't quite look ready for prime time. A lot of the film, though, was obviously done practically, which is not a shock given that Knight has a devotion to stop-motion animation and very tactile realism, and I admire that. Overall, I'd say I generally liked the look and style of the film, and that's not really where any of the problems lie. Whenever I give a movie like this a mediocre to bad review, I often get quite a bit of pushback saying, come on, why are you being so hard on it? It was fun. It was so much fun. I certainly heard a lot of that with The Mandalorian and Grogu, and the argument that I usually get is many times agreeing with what I said. Sure, the script maybe wasn't the best. Sure, the characters maybe weren't the best, but it was a lot of fun. Come on, get with the program. My philosophy is that I think you're setting up a false choice there. I think a movie can be a lot of fun and also not have those other issues. And for me to just give a movie a pass just based on the fun factor would be to kind of penalize the movies that try a little bit harder and are more successful on all fronts, not just the fun, but also the characters and the screenplay and everything else. I do actually like to have fun, believe it or not, and it is an emotion that I understand and that I felt in the past. And I really wanted to have fun with this movie, and there were a few times that I did. But there was so much in this movie that just felt old. The cliche dialogue, the tired beats, the please clap cameos and references to the animated series, including the inevitable 4 non-blondes needle drop, which I think was used at a really inappropriate, out of place moment. It's like somebody didn't realize until last week that they hadn't used that song and said, oh geez, we got to stick it in somewhere. Just put it in there. I got the feeling that this wasn't a movie that was meant to be fresh and original. It was a movie that was meant to evoke other movies that were fresh and original that audiences already liked. Sort of like if you fed ChatGPT the full He-Man wiki and told it to write a script for a movie that would have been the 7th highest grosser of 2016. My problem isn't that Masters of the Universe didn't live up to the expectations of my childhood nostalgia, it's that it leaned on the past too much by going for formula over function. It's a script filled with cues to laugh instead of actual funny jokes. It's interesting that Masters of the Universe is coming out this upcoming weekend in the wake of the success of Backrooms and Obsession, which have been outshining another aging media property in Star Wars. And what we have with Masters of the Universe is a studio that's pushing a 44-year-old intellectual property in a movie that's directed by a guy in his 50s, that's written by guys in their 40s and 50s, but is aimed at young audiences because some executive 20 years ago thought that it was a surefire bet to make money. And my suspicion is that this weekend, I think that the studio is going to find out that it was not a surefire bet to make money. I think Masters of the Universe reflects an increasingly outdated worldview of what audiences want, and I also think that studios like MGM are going to have to adapt to the real world and the changing conditions, otherwise they will not have the power for very much longer. I would have loved a great He-Man movie, and this isn't a terrible one. As I said, it has its moments, the cast is mostly pretty good, the production design, costumes, and makeup are really well done, but it all feels so safe, stripped of so much character from decades of development and rewrites and being watered down. The fact that it looks so much like classic He-Man just highlights the fact that it doesn't actually feel like classic He-Man or anything else, really. Maybe there's some poetry in this, but on my personal scale, I'm giving Masters of the Universe, which was the first thing I was ever a fan of, a rating of not a fan. It really dips just outside of it's fine territory. If you go to this movie and you have a really good time, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm happy for you. I see where you're coming from, but I'm just not one of you, because when it comes to this version of Masters of the Universe, unlike when I was 5 years old, I just can't play pretend. So those are my thoughts on Masters of the Universe, which hits theaters this weekend. What do you think? Are you still going to head out to see it? Let me know down in the comments below. And before we go, I'm going to thank the sponsor for this video, Factor.
Schools are getting out, the weather's getting hot, the days are getting longer. It's that time of year when your schedule fills up with tons of things to do, and when there's less time than ever to worry about prepping and cooking a delicious full meal. But there's good news. Factor is here to keep you fed and enjoying the summer sun. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen meals right to your door that are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. They do the shopping, the prepping, the cooking. All you have to worry about is the eating. And this time of year when people are more focused on their health goals than ever, Factor has meals built around them, whether it's weight loss, more protein, GLP-1 support, or like me, just not eating as much bad stuff. And even if you're not able to travel this summer, Factor delivers globally inspired meals from around the world, including Mediterranean and Asian meals, so you can bring international eating right to your door. Factor also has a rotating weekly menu of over 100 meals every week, so you'll never get stuck in a rut. Next week's menu includes a barbecue bacon burger with white cheddar mac and cheese, which to me practically screams summer eating. Head to factormeals.com/Murrell50off and use code Murrell50off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with new subscription only while supplies last until 9/27/2026. See the website for more details. That's factormeals.com/Murrell50off, code Murrell50off.
Thanks to Factor for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching. Be sure to stay tuned right here for the latest in movie news, reviews, box office, and more. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.